Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and I just wanted to drop in for a quick second to tell you that this podcast is really gaining popularity, and in order for us to continue growing like this, I'd love it if you could rate and review us on iTunes. Plus, I'm always excited to hear feedback and continue to improve our content based on what you want to hear. I know I'm in. Are you? What will the Raptors do about the DeMarre DeRozan problem? Did the Nuggets win their trade with the Blazers? Who is at fault in the Durant-Westbrook feud? The only question left is, say it with me, you win? Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown podcast. Thanks for joining us. Dave, we are here live. Ready to go.
Yeah.
And I think this is really cool. We did this last week, and we were able to, we were able to broadcast and record our podcast and have it live on Periscope at the same time, and it was a really great response. So we're doing it again.
Yeah, my favorite part is, we actually got a lot of really good questions last week, and, we always do a little, pre-show. We normally talk for about, 45 minutes to an hour before we do the podcast, which I don't know if that helps or hurts, but, last week we did our pre-show, and then we got asked a bunch of questions that we hadn't even thought about. So, guys, start firing your questions in whenever you're ready. But to start, I think we should start up in Toronto, right?
I think so, because it was weird. I literally was DMing you yesterday after they lost again to the Pistons, and I didn't even look at the game, but I didn't realize they lost a big lead in the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter, but still in the fourth quarter. And I said to you that, Casey might be in trouble here. And he sort of has spent a little bit of each year since he's been hired in the hot seat to some degree, but they've lost 10 of 14. And I feel like it's a really quiet story that no one's talked about until, I do the video today, which we're going to look at, this afternoon, what's going on there. But what do you think about this? What are the cracks in the dike that we're seeing?
Well, so, they've basically been like 2 games behind the Cavs all season until this slide started. And now they are, after tonight, there's a good chance that they're the 5th seed in the East. For a team that was expected to, improve on last year, maybe push up to 60 games. I mean, they started out so well. This has got to be disappointing. To me, not just to me, but to the guys on the team, it seems like they're having issues with the coaching staff, with the offense, and DeMarre Carroll had some really interesting comments about how, in the early parts of the game, they play a very team-oriented style, and then it feels like in the fourth quarter it stagnates, and he stands around watching other people with the basketball. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to read into who he's talking about. Obviously this is a shot at DeMarre DeRozan, but more so I think is a shot at Dwayne Casey and the coaching staff. Failures in the offense, that falls on the coaching staff.
It does. It does. Here's the interesting thing, and we can compare this to the Scott Brooks conundrum, right? Where Scott Brooks in Washington, a year separated from coaching OKC, has a really good offense with good movement, and they're getting good shots for these guys, of which had never really appeared, in OKC while he coached there. So is it the coach, or is it the players, or is it like a mixture of both? I mean, it's kind of weird for us, I think, at our levels, or even, any non-NBA level, to look at this and say, well, geez, you design an offense, the players are supposed to run it, and then they don't. I mean, that has to be some of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You need buy-in from your players, but if they're doing it for 3/4 of the game, I mean, they were up 16 last night before they lost to the Pistons, and the Pistons are surprisingly not a good basketball team. They're the 8th seed right now, and they haven't been good for a while. And to blow a 16-point lead to a team like that, I mean, that's just inexcusable. Do we have the Kyle Lowry quote?
We do. So we'll bring in the Kyle Lowry quote, because we certainly want to hear what he had to say about Dwayne Casey. So here it is.
Very, professional.
Are you guys beginning to get worried? This slump is kind of
I am. my end. I'm starting to get worried, yeah. And it's not going the way we're supposed to be going, and things aren't changing. So, yeah, I'm starting to get worried.
Coach talked about the execution down the stretch, time score situation. What went wrong in the fourth quarter there on both ends?
Everything. Honestly, everything. Keep putting in the same situations over and over, and they're not being successful. Something got to give and something got to change.
Any idea what that is?
I have an idea, but I'm gonna, keep my mouth shut. Keep it very, professional.
Okay, so that's what we heard from Kyle Lowry. Certainly interesting stuff there. He has an idea, but he wants to keep it professional. So what's the captain subtext there on that one?
Oh, I think he definitely wants to call out the coaching staff, and my assumption is that there would be some DeMar DeRozan call out as well. Mm-hmm. Last night, the game ended on a DeMar DeRozan mid-range pull-up that he missed, and he was hurt, and I don't know. I just think he's not quite 100%. And when you're not 100%, you need to kind of take a backseat to other guys. But he's not a spot-up guy. That's just not what his game is, and that's not why he's got a max contract. So it's hard to adjust to something like that. But this is where the coaching staff needs to come in, and they need to say, hey, this is how we need to play.
It's funny because we've seen this before, like with LeBron, and the notion of players are not getting called out in the film sessions. Like, this seems to be a thing that other players do not like. They want to have a frank discussion, because in their mind, if you do that, then it will allow you to improve, and you won't have the same mistakes. I've always sort of advocated they should just do film sessions individually, so you don't have to ever deal with that in an open setting. But either way, you're right. I think what they're trying to say is that they need Casey, and fill in the blank. They need Hoiberg. They need, David Blatt, whoever this was. They need him to sort of put your foot down and finally say this, because they obviously know. So what that tells me is that obviously Casey's play is designed for a pass here, keep him a cut, move, and there's a shot. And it's the players who are breaking it off. It's the player who's breaking it off. In this case, DeMar DeRozan. Right? There's no offense to design when he gets, I would say, 40% of his shots are not off of a kind of an offense that any coach would design.
Yeah, and well, you know what? Periscope just lit up when we started talking about DeRozan and the offense, and a lot of people have pointed this out. DeMar DeRozan is kind of the king of the tough mid-range jumper. Remember early in the season, he started out, he was hitting like 58% or something for the first month of the season, which is why his numbers were so amazing. That's just not viable, high percentage basketball. Like, you're not gonna be able to do that game after game after game for the whole season. And now, those numbers have fallen back to earth a little bit, and we're regressing to the mean. So, DeMar, he takes more tough mid-range jumpers than any player I could think of.
Yeah, and in the beginning of the season, we did a video on this, and it was enough games where I sort of had to shrug and say, well, I guess he's going to force these mid-range shots. It is sustainable, but perhaps that's the issue, is that it's not sustainable. And I think the other issue isn't even that he's still scoring at a decent rate or a decent percentage. It is the ill will you can engender with your teammates, right? If you continue to do that, and then they have some losses that get thrown into that as well. So remember, these are 10 to 14. Now, of the 14 games they played, the last 14, DeRozan's only played in 7 of them. So you could argue that the 7 that they didn't do well without him is because they didn't have him. But, we're now 7 games is not a tiny sample size for a season to look at, okay, he's in there as well, and they're still losing.
Well, they're 9-13 since January 1st. That's not a good basketball team. This is a big skid. This is not a small sample size. Even the 14 games, 10 of 14, that's not a small sample size. That's pretty indicative of a team that is struggling when other teams are starting to hit their stride. Look at what Washington's doing. Washington and Boston both are starting to play some of their best basketball, and the Raptors struggling at this point. It just doesn't bode well for the future. To be a 5 seed after comfortably being a 2 seed for so long. I mean, I don't know. It's tough. I don't imagine it gets Casey fired, but if they scuffle, and just kind of squeak into the playoffs, or at least go into the playoffs with a whimper, and they lose in the first round, I think that's the end of the road for Casey.
Okay, well, I got some interesting provocative ideas coming out here. So I'm looking at the results of these games. And so he played in the first 3 losses of a 5-game losing skid that started this 14-game thing we're talking about. And then he was out, and then he came back. So of that, so he played the first 3, and those are all losses. Only one of these wins of the last 4 teams when he played, and it was against the corpse of the Los Angeles Clippers at home. So, that you could look at this and say, geez, when he was out, we actually did play a little bit better. They had a big win over Milwaukee. And a squeaker over New Orleans, and then they beat the Nets. So it's a little bit uneven to look at. But here's the thing: honestly, if I were you, Jerry, I might even say trade DeMar DeRozan.
You know what? You just stepped all over what I was about to say.
I win.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is good because this means that it's not a crazy, it's not a hot take. I wasn't a huge fan of the DeMar max extension. And I changed my mind for the first 2 months. I was like, oh, man, okay. Well, DeMar DeRozan has obviously worked on his game. I mean, he is a hard worker. He puts in a lot of work during the offseason. My thought was he was going to start shooting more threes. And, he just, I don't know. I think that there is something there. A DeMar DeRozan trade, they could fill so many needs if they just could make that happen. The problem is who's going to trade for DeMar DeRozan on a max contract?
I think that a lot of people think he's really good, and he is. And I have a feeling that there's always going to be a place for a guy like that, and that teams will probably mistakenly, buy high on him, or whatever that term is. They're gonna give some things away for that. So I don't know. I think that there's something there, and I feel like, this is it. This is the ceiling they have anyway. And their ceiling is Eastern Conference Finals, 6 games tops, right? That's if they're playing really well. And maybe even not even that high anymore without what they had last year. So, yeah, I'm thinking they could trade DeRozan. I've heard some rumors about give BB the starting spot and get rid of Valanciunas as well.
Who you heard that from?
Who?
You heard that from me.
I did.
Talked about it on the post-game show last week.
Okay.
Yeah, I would be trying to move Valanciunas for sure. DeRozan, I'm not sure about, but it was a thought I had. I mean, I wonder if Orlando wouldn't be interested in DeRozan. A team like that. The Nets, they're not ready for that. But you could probably get Orlando. You could probably get Chicago. Oh, Chicago would definitely take DeMar DeRozan. They could use another guard that can't shoot threes.
Oh yeah, you know what? That would be awesome.
Might as well get all of them. Collect the whole set.
Milwaukee. Hey, while we're talking, we might as well go there.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of teams. Hey, look, first of all, DeMar DeRozan is a good player. This is not. I'm not trying to disparage him. I'm just saying that for what the Raptors need to do, he's kind of in the way. He kind of holds them back.
Yes, I agree. I agree, although he does do some things that kind of help, but it's just certain matchups and certain games, he's just not very viable. So I think that I'm really excited about this, and I just don't know if Ujiri would ever really consider it, but we're also looking at the long-term goals of the Raptors. They don't necessarily want to be kind of relevant. I mean, I guess being relevant is probably a win and being in the conversation, but they've already done that. They've already been in that for a couple of years now, and if they really want to do something that will ensure that they will have the ability going forward. I mean, because Nogueira is going to be someone they can really, build around the front court. And listen, DeMarre Carroll is a guy you'd want on a good team in that third role. And Kyle Lowry, is going to give you, how many more years is he going to give you?
Well, he's 31, and he's going to sign a max contract this offseason.
Are these Dave's numbers, or are we sure he's 31?
No, I think he's either 31 or he's 31 this summer. I'll double check. Are they Dave's? These are alternative numbers.
Right. I think he might be 30. I might have checked it, and it might be right. But,
yeah, I think. He's 31 this summer, right? When he goes to sign his contract. So, or starting next season, when the next contract starts. So, you're looking to sign him until he's 35. That's not bad. I mean, his game isn't really predicated on amazing athleticism. I don't think he's going to get any weaker. Hopefully his shooting continues to improve, and, his decision-making is fantastic. So I think that, he's going to get a max from someone, and if I'm Toronto, I probably would just go ahead and give it to him, depending on what they're doing elsewhere. I know there's this big thing where Toronto can't get marquee free agents, and so that was the justification for signing DeMarre to the max.
Yeah,
is to lose him for nothing. But they could have traded him last year.
Yeah, no, you're right. And by the way, the reason that for that reason that they can't sign any free agents, then they have to do it in a trade, right? The only way is to bring a hostage over and hope that they can wine and dine him enough where he'd be like, oh, I like, Toronto's a nice place, I want to stay here. I mean, there's taxes implications as well, I think, which are negative for the Raptors, I believe, right? It's not a great place to work 41 times a year. And that's the other thing is, and by the way, I want to throw this out there because I was listening to somebody, and we're talking about the contracts and how much money. You have to realize, first of all, taxes, you get 50% of your contract is taken away pretty much, right, from the get-go. Then you got to give whatever 10% to your manager, 3% to your agent, whatever it is. You're not walking home with $20 million a year if that's what you're making, and that's what I feel like. People don't always understand that, and certainly the Raptors have that problem because the Canadian income tax, which only applies to the games they play in Canada, is higher than a lot of places in America.
Yeah, and well, really, so when LeBron finally signs like this $40 million contract or whatever he's going to sign, we get half of that. You and me, like we literally take that from him. And it goes, well, it's not going to any bridges or anything, but we're going to stick to sports this time. But it's this is why places like the Miami Heat, that you would think the Dallas Mavericks, like in states where they don't have a state income tax, that really does matter. All you need is if you have a team that has a good culture, you should be able to sign. You should have a leg up in free agency because of the lack of state income tax. So, I mean, the Miami Heat leverage that all the time to get guys to take a discount.
Right. Yeah, and it is significant. There's no question. And I know the agents are the ones, they're the gatekeepers, and they're the ones who really respond to that kind of stuff because it's like, they like to be able to get more money for their clients too. So, it'll be interesting to see how that works. Certainly provocative. And if I really were Masai Ujiri, I would get rid of Valanciunas and DeMarre right now. And you know what? If he did it right, and he's good with this kind of stuff, they could become a championship contending team. Certainly, they could be miles above anybody else in the Eastern Conference except for maybe Cleveland, and that's going to be better than where they are now.
So should we move on? Talk about this trade that just happened?
Yeah. So let's go. Let's break it down. So the trade was, and now before I go crazy, it's straight up 1-for-1, right? Plumlee?
Well, all right. It's Nurkic and a first for Plumlee and a second.
Okay.
And the first is going to be Memphis's first, so bottom 10 of the first round. Not really, and for a team like the Nuggets, that pick doesn't really have much value. On Twitter, it seems like only people that watch a lot of Nuggets games realize how good of a trade this is for the Denver Nuggets. Nurkic has not been good at all. He's kind of been a little bit of a locker room cancer. He's been very mopey about not playing. He kills their offense when he comes in because he's not the passer that Jokic is. And, just generally, in kind of a malaise that has kind of left a funk on the entire team. And so to get rid of him and to lose a first rounder that they don't need any more young players. They still have their own first rounder. They're so stacked. They've got guys like Malik Beasley who cannot get into the rotation. He cannot get on the court. So they've got enough young guys. To get him off the team and to get a guy like Mason Plumlee, who, while he is a dumpster fire on defense, is actually a good passer. So you can continue to play the exact same way from the first minute to the last minute. All game long, they can have guys cutting around, Plumlee can facilitate from the elbows, similar to Jokic. His lack of shooting means that you don't quite have as much space, but Plumlee gives you, let's say, 70% of what Jokic can do passing. So it allows you to continue to cut, continue to have guys moving, and so your offensive flow doesn't really change throughout the game.
Yeah, here's the idea, because Plumlee has been tantalizing as a player in the NBA, where we've seen evidence every once in a while of something really great. Like, oh, wow, he could be a Draymond kind of guy on short rolls and passing and handling the ball. Can't shoot it without question. I've seen him rim protect a little bit every now and then, although it's just not a real consistent thing for him for whatever reason. Not physical issues, because this guy is built like a statue. But the argument now could be that putting him in a role off the bench, where he can now apply his wares against bench players more than starters, could actually get you maybe more than 70% of what Jokic does output overall, because he's a good rebounder. He can block a shot or two every now and then. If he's Mike Malone built an incredible defense with the Warriors, and certainly we've seen some evidence that could happen again. The Nuggets are not highly rated on defense now. I should check, but I don't think they are. But at the very least, I think, this would be a really nice pickup for Denver. And, to defend Nurkic, he started out as a starter, and there's something about starting a season as the starter and then losing that job that kind of, you're almost guaranteed to have a guy moping at some point if he completely loses it and it really doesn't play much at all after that. It's tough because they clearly are playing better when he's not in there and when they have Jokic in there. But, it's just one of those things where a change of scenery, I like to think, would do him some good. The question is, will he play it all? Is he going to get the minutes he wants in Portland?
Right. Well, he's young, right? And he did show flashes in his rookie season before he hurt his knee. I think he can play. It's just, I think like you said, he needed a change of scenery. Jake Anderson on Periscope just asked if Plumlee's defensive problems have to do with the fact that the guards that he was playing with up in Portland were so bad, and actually it's part of what I think Jokic's defensive issues are. I think Jokic and Plumlee could both be at least average defensive players, if not plus defenders. Jokic has really, really active hands, which throws guys off when they get inside and try to do anything in the post. He's great at hitting any sort of entry pass. But Moutier dies on screens. Dame Lillard dies on screens. CJ McCollum dies on screens. So you hope that as these guards develop around him, that you see an uptick in defensive efficiency from Plumlee and Jokic. Now, I don't know that they're going to re-sign Plumlee this summer. They may just let him walk. And if they can't get him for a good price, I don't get signing a backup center to starter money. And he is a backup, especially Jokic is, one of the 5 best centers in the league, I think, offensively at least. So Plumlee's not starting over him.
Right. That's an interesting question as far as what he's worth on the market, because certainly, he's used to sort of being a starter for, at least in Portland. What is he worth? Is he worth 12, 14?
It's restricted free agency, so we'll find out. That's the one beauty of the system is that, like the free market will tell you, hey, Plumlee is worth this much. And which is why one of the things, it was really smart of the Trailblazers to not sign him to an extension last fall, because you want to let the market dictate his value in particular, because I don't think he's a starting center in the league from a play perspective. So you don't want to overpay a guy, and they weren't sure, I think, going into the season. What, is he going to be the starter going forward? They signed Ezeli, so obviously they weren't completely enamored with Plumlee. And that was a smart decision by them. And then, they got a first rounder and Nurkic out of it. I imagine Portland is going to package that first with some other assets. They have 3 first rounders for this draft, and I'm expecting them to make a relatively large trade. I think that they're going to make a big move, and people are going to say, wow, where did that come from? Because, the deals that happen, you never hear about.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah, the ones that we hear about are always sort of like floated out there, leaked to get like public reaction, and probably for some other trade that we're going to see later, usually. So a fascinating thing, and I feel like obviously Portland might not be done. There might be another move they're going to make before the trade deadline as well. Maybe not wait for draft stuff to do those trades and get rid of those picks. Which also brings up the question of CJ, Dame. We're anticipating something fun and amazing and exciting for the trade deadline. I really hope it doesn't turn into the same old dud that we normally see, but and it probably will. But there's something going on there. I mean, how about this? Could you do a trade like DeRozan for CJ or that kind of thing?
I don't think DeRozan doesn't really move the needle. I mean, I think CJ McCollum is a better player, and Toronto people are probably going to come at me for this, but CJ McCollum is an efficient scorer. Mm-hmm. He's a better ball handler, and he's a 42, 43% three-point shooter. I'd rather have CJ McCollum. So, yeah, I mean, CJ would help the Raptors a ton, but I don't think DeRozan moves the needle for the Trailblazers. And DeRozan, they're about the same age because CJ did his 4 years in school. So, yeah.
Yeah, that said, well, no, CJ is younger than DeRozan. It's got to be, right? DeRozan is what? DeRozan is
27?
He is, where's his age on this thing? 27. CJ's not 27.
Isn't he?
No.
He's 26, right?
Let's see. CJ is 25.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
That's different. Now, that said, the notion of getting DeRozan in a different situation, well, you know what, he's not. He'd be playing alongside the same equivalent of Lowry in Lillard. So, because I'm thinking that there might be other places where, DeRozan could be better in a different role with different players, but that's not it. Anyhow.
Yeah, I think Orlando would make a lot of sense for DeRozan. I'm going to look into this further, but yeah. So back to that trade. It's possible we could see Dame or CJ get moved. I don't think it's probable. I think it's possible, but not probable. With the 3 first-rounders, Ezeli's contract, it could be easily moved. Al-Farouq Aminu, Evan Turner. I mean, they could probably unload Evan Turner. My buddy Connor Williamson says, what about a first or 2 firsts Evan Turner to Orlando for Biyombo and a second? And I think that trade could get done.
Okay.
I mean, Biyombo.
What are they going to do? Are they going to cut Ezeli? Like, what are they going to do?
Yeah, they could just either buy him out, or I think is it a team option on his contract? I have to pull it up, but
okay.
Yeah, I should just have these sheets up.
That's interesting. Again, Evan Turner, to me, even Orlando might be smart enough to realize that there's not a lot of value for him, and I don't know if he moves the needle for anybody at this point. It worthy of me a video. I feel like there's something going on with Evan Turner. On Twitter, I've been talking about it, where it just doesn't work. Something is a little bit off. Even though there are times when it seems like they're doing well, whatever, it's sort of disrupted a lot of things that were going so well last year for them, I think.
Well, he was at his best in Boston as the ball handler on second units.
Yeah.
And now you've got Dame and CJ. So, he's surplus. You don't need his best skill, which is his ball handling, right? You just don't need that. And so his inability to spot up in the corner and hit threes really makes him a non-starter. I mean, he just can't play for them. Whereas with CJ, if he's off ball, he can spot up.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That's true. Well, let's turn to Twitter. We have a good question from Ewan Duar, who asks us, do you think that Brett Brown is likely to be the Sixers head coach this time next year?
I do. I think Brett Brown's – I think that – at least I like to think that he's in it for the long haul. I mean, not just him, but I think the team is fully behind him. He's obviously been dealt a really difficult hand, with the tank and, the injuries and things like that. And you look at what he's done without even having his full team. They went on this nice run, and they've played good basketball. And they're entertaining to watch. So the style of play under Brett Brown is entertaining. He's very well respected around the league. One of my favorite guys. If he's ever on anyone's podcast, I'm listening to it because He's got great stories. He was with the Spurs forever. So, I think he's definitely still the coach. And I think he ought to be. The guy's good. He's really good at his job.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're finally starting to see the results of all that culture building and all the fundamentals they've been installing and putting in. Granted, it's only when Embiid is on the floor, but that means something. And I would imagine, that they're happy with what they're doing this year. And there's progression, and I would imagine they're going to get another good pick, and they're going to be, and then Simmons is coming back. Wait, Simmons hasn't been back yet, right? Have I missed it?
No, I think Simmons is going to come back after the All-Star break,
okay.
And it looks like Embiid, who's been out for the last 10 games or whatever, has a slight tear in his meniscus.
Ooh, on that awkward thing that he did?
No, it was on the bone bruise. But what they're saying is it's small and it may have already been there. Right. So he's out until at least after the All-Star break. I mean, if they shut him down, it's not the end of the world.
Right. Yeah, because they're still competing for that first pick.
Yeah.
And so, either way. But there's no question that I think Brett Brown there's something there, and they at the very least, they owe him the next year. If it goes south next year when they're healthy and they're 10 and 25, okay, then he might get canned before the All-Star break next year. But, I mean, this is probably one of the reasons why it took so long for him to get hired. Because if you remember that summer, they went back and forth. I don't think he got hired till August, I want to say, because I have a feeling they explained what he wanted to do, and he was like, why would I want to do this? This is going to ruin my career record for my, I don't know if he'll ever get back to a respectable record. I mean, you never know. But I feel like whatever the assurances they needed to give him, whatever it was enough that he's like, okay, I will take the job. But it took a while to convince him, it sounds like.
Oh, and remember, they did just sign him to an extension.
Oh, they did, right. So, he is safe. It's not even whatever. The answer is yes, he will be there, and he will certainly get every opportunity to continue winning there and turning it around. Any other questions?
Yeah, so our buddy Gigolo Puff asks on Periscope, should the Celtics trade I'm assuming he means the Nets pick for an All-Star or just keep it? I don't know if that trade's out there. The trade, a pick for an All-Star, but I actually think that the Celtics should just keep it. I think that that's the smart move. There's a good chance.
You can't. He must mean somebody else, right? Like a player and the pick or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Because you can't get an All-Star for a first-round pick.
Yeah, but I think that it's a smart move for them because they're sort of straddling the line a little bit. I mean, they're the 2 seed right now. They're only 2.5 games back of Cleveland, and they're playing good basketball. And then they signed Horford to the max contract last summer, so they obviously want to compete for a championship. But with this team, can you beat Cleveland? No.
Right.
Is there a guy out there you can go get that makes it so you can beat Cleveland? I mean, outside of Boogie, I don't know, and I don't think Boogie's available. So they could use a real point guard, and this draft just happens to have a few that are going to go really high. And if they have the number 1 pick, I mean, this is the perfect draft to be able to choose from if you need a point guard. This is why Dallas.
What does that mean with Isaiah then?
Well, okay, have I not said this enough? Isaiah Thomas. I like Isaiah Thomas, man. I love that he's a little guy that can put up, 30 a game, but he doesn't play any defense. And his net rating is 0.7 or something, positive 0.7, and he scores 30 points a game. Yes, he does provide all of their fourth quarter offense, and that is a problem for Boston. And Marcus Smart was 100% correct when he said we cannot just rely on Isaiah Thomas. But you can't rely on the defensive end. I don't want to pay Isaiah Thomas a max contract when his contract expires at the end of next year. I would sell high on Isaiah Thomas. I would try to trade him to a contender, someone that needs some scoring punch off the bench. Because I just don't think with his defense, he's a starter in the NBA. And I know I'm going to get killed for this because he is so good and he's so skilled. And he's going to go left and he's little and somehow he still finishes every single time.
If only there was a team out there that was looking for a playmaker off the bench to play for them that was a contender.
Yeah, but you're not going to get Isaiah Thomas traded to Cleveland.
Right, they're not going to hand them that so easy. But I mean, if there was some sort of 3-team deal and they got an all-star in return, there's your all-star in return thing.
Right.
Then yeah, they might, but that would have to be like a CP3 or something crazy like that.
And I don't know. I don't think Chris Paul is going to get traded, but there's something that's going to happen.
You think the Clippers are going to pull a deal? I mean, we've been hearing about it for a long time.
I think they have to.
Well, the problem is they don't have to because CP3 is out, so now they're like, well, the only reason why we're losing is because he's not here, and once he gets back, it's all going to be great. I mean, is this Melo thing dead or what?
I don't know. I mean, well, the no trade clause kind of kills things. And Melo was fantastic yesterday, especially into the game, and it felt to me like he had a little bit of a bounce in his step, and I don't know what it was about. Maybe because Dolan and the Oakley thing, and the pressure was kind of off of Carmelo, and he felt like he'd been under the spotlight a little bit too much recently. But man, he was great yesterday. And if I was a team that needed some scoring punch, I'd be calling the Knicks. I'd be calling Carmelo. I would be trying to get Melo, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. I don't know how he fits in anywhere, really. Because now you're going to take a guy who's like the man and trying to like shove him in the middle of a season to an already existing framework of a team. Right? That's not easy. Unless you can somehow get the FIBA Melo, which who blends in great with really good teammates and ends up being the best player out there as the third best player out there. So I don't know how that works.
And maybe you do. And I might have been too quick to dismiss that we could see FIBA Melo in the NBA. I mean, he just passed Charles Barkley for 25th all time in scoring. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame player. You have to wonder if he wants a ring more than he cares about scoring, and that's really what it's going to boil down to with him.
You're right. And what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. If he waives his no trade clause, then we'll know.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like at some point after he retires, he's going to realize, I really should have, gone for that ring. And I think right now it just feels to me like he's much more interested in sort of being comfortable and having the life he wants to live, and maybe not winning or not winning a championship is the number one priority. I don't know.
I'll tell you what, man. You know what? My quality of life would be way more important to me than a championship.
Wow.
Am I happy? Is my wife happy? Is my family happy? You know what I mean? Like, because you can't get back these years, right? Like, and life is short, and who cares about a championship ring? When you're an old man, you're going to be like, man, remember that? How much fun we had living in New York City. I just don't think that we put a little bit too much value on championship rings.
Wise words from Dave Dufour.
There you go.
We'll have to do our own little. That'll be one of our quotes we tweet out on Twitter with this podcast. So,
there you go.
And again, don't forget, you guys are watching how we record our live podcasts on Periscope. And if you're listening to the podcast later and you didn't get a chance to check it out, make sure that while we're recording this on Monday mornings, we broadcast it live on Periscope, so you could actually get a taste of it for a few minutes while you're doing whatever else you're doing, and then come back and listen to it on iTunes and vice versa. We love having the feedback and the interaction. We're actually we're answering some questions right now on Periscope and Twitter. So make sure that you put part of your schedule away for our Monday morning Periscopes, and then come back for more when you can hear the whole thing with your headphones later on while you're working out.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the most fun things that I get to do. So I really enjoy it. And we've got our live show tonight for anybody who's listening or watching right now. We will be breaking down the. Did
we decide?
Yeah, I think we're doing the TNT game. It's OKC
and Washington. Oh,
and
yeah.
Washington.
Wall
That's
versus
right.
Russ.
That's right. Russ versus John Wall. I'm expecting John Wall to have a big game. I think John Wall maybe gets a triple-double tonight.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, certainly, we none of us are fans of Russell Westbrook's defense that much, and so Wall getting big numbers tonight certainly would be within the realm of possibilities. And then Wall's defense usually, when he's engaged and whatever, ready to go, certainly is good or great. Do we think he's going to bring the A game today?
Who, John Wall or Russell?
Wall's defense, is he going to be able to shut down Russ?
I think we're going to get a big John Wall defensive performance. I don't know if you're going to get him to shut down, because how do you shut down Russell Westbrook? But I think that we're going to get a big-time performance from John Wall. And, we kind of jumped over. We didn't even think about this yet. OKC Golden State on Saturday night. What did you think about Kevin Durant's return to Oklahoma City?
Well, I mean, I thought that Kerr had a great line where he goes, you can boo the player, but I think cheer the man. I think something like that, what he said. And, it was pretty crazy and pretty intense. And I actually had to leave. I left before I saw the altercation, I suppose, or whatever the words were between Russ and KD. And I know that KD has been trying to play it down and sort of say, well, this is between me and him, and it's not that big of a deal or whatever, but it is a big deal. And these guys were supposedly really good friends, and then he never talked to Russ. And I think it's all on KD for probably doing it poorly, that he should have been the bigger man and said, hey, I'm deciding what's going on. Now, Russ might have done his job to push him away as well, but Russ is the guy who stayed, and KD's the guy who left. So it's up to him, but perhaps KD doesn't care or doesn't seem to value the need to have that friendship anymore, which is also his prerogative. And it also might have been a thing where, Russ could have pushed him away enough where he didn't feel comfortable reaching out. So, it's a lot of intrigue, and certainly gave us what made a relatively blowout of a game more interesting.
Yeah, it felt like the whole squad, like the entire, Roberson, God, I always mess it up. Roberson got into KD's face. You had the little headbutt incident, not a headbutt, more of a head rub. But, it just, I don't know, man. Like, I really wanted him to come back and it to be good-natured fun, but it just felt vindictive. It wasn't fun. I wanted him to, by all means, I trash-talk my friends probably harder than I trash-talk anyone, and that's how I wanted it to be. And I was a little disappointed that we didn't get that, because I think the NBA is at its best when it's good-natured trash talk rather than this, whatever this narrative was, where KD's some kind of bad guy because he changed jobs.
Right. I know. Listen, Russ is definitely culpable in the whole thing, in the overarching reason for KD wanting to leave. And by the way, what does it say where, they've had these promising teams and these players, and like slowly but surely they all sort of leave, and they all leave in a very, it's not a nice way. Like, Reggie Jackson left angry. I would imagine that Harden, even though he was traded, I don't think it was going perfectly in the locker room, and I think that's what they were sensing. And Durant left. I think I'm missing somebody else. I know Ibaka got traded as well, but either way, well,
there was similar stuff about Ibaka as well.
Oh yeah, right. He was complaining too. So it's like, well, if you start looking at this and figuring out, well, if there is a common theme, it could be Russ. It could be the way he plays and the way he is, and let Russ be Russ. Allows him to be as successful as he can, but it also rubs people the wrong way. Again, I'm just conjecturing here, but after a little while, you look at this and realize, well, something's going on, and there's got to be, there could very well be a theme here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that where there's smoke, there's fire, and who knows? I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't want to say that Melo. I don't want to say that Russ is a bad teammate, but there's some smoke there.
Right. And the culture they talk about, which they spent so much time in OKC trying to build. And Kevin Durant was saying stuff like they wouldn't allow him to speak to reporters at certain times. I was listening to the Bill Simmons podcast, And like that's kind of weird. I think he was contrasting it to how open they are with the Warriors, for instance, which is different because he's older now and he's a veteran and knows what to say or what not to say. But still, there's a real sort of closed atmosphere where people are maybe on eggshells and they're afraid to say things, and it just all builds into that, and it doesn't make for the best work environment, I'd imagine. Again, pure conjecture, but a lot of times when you've read these books about seasons afterwards and you realize you find out the truth was pretty close to what you've been hearing over through the years or through the season about what's going on. So whether or not it is conjecture, there's something there, and it probably has something to do with Russ and the way he is. And, you're getting a lot of great basketball from him, but you're also pushing people away. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I know that I wouldn't want to just stand 30 feet from the basket and wait for my turn, on offense. That would drive me crazy. And I think that, Kevin Durant's been pretty open about that in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
But I was just disappointed. I really wanted it to be more fun. So instead, it was more like you ran into your crazy ex-girlfriend at the mall or something. And that, I don't know. I didn't like that. It wasn't a good look.
Right.
Yeah.
The one I will say this, that you definitely you make me stand 30 inches from my mic and have to wait for my turn every week. So, but I'm not holding it against you.
We're gonna run some pick and roll.
Yeah, right. I want to do a couple. Never mind. Anyhow, but yes, but that's why it works well. I am more than happy to be in my role. It sounds like you are as well, and as a result, we're making some beautiful music together.
Yeah, I agree. This has been awesome.
So let's not forget, we're going to do our live show tonight on Periscope, Facebook Live, YouTube, our YouTube channel, which has our live stuff, B-Ball Breakdown Live. And maybe we'll do a live look-in during the game and just sort of talk about it, even though there might be a 2-second delay. We can try that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we ought to give it a shot.
All right, so we'll try doing that, maybe doing like the second quarter. We'll cover like a whole quarter of the game, see how we do there, and then we'll do our definitely a post-game show afterwards. So stay tuned for that, sports fans, and also find this on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever else listen to your podcast if you're not watching the whole thing on Periscope, which is probably, I don't know if anyone's going to be able to stay through the whole thing for Periscope. So, but again, don't forget, we're here on Periscope when we're recording this. We're here on iTunes afterwards, anytime you want to listen to this the rest of the week. And anything else we got to talk about?
No, I think we basically covered everything.
Cool. Well, awesome stuff. Great show today, and thanks for joining me, Dave, as always on Mondays. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Dave?
Yes, I am.